Look at transitioning, hyper-dense environments like the Arab world, South Africa, the Caribbean, or Nigeria. These are regions sitting on immense natural and human resources, yet they repeatedly hit invisible ceilings that stunt their development. For decades, leadership has relied heavily on economic and infrastructural metrics, like GDP growth and export volume, to diagnose a nation's health. But these standard numbers consistently fail to predict or prevent sudden structural collapses. When these standard metrics consistently fail to identify the warning signs of collapse, they reveal a massive blind spot, a diagnostic crisis that existing economic models simply aren't designed to measure. This brings us to what we call the authority void. It is the exact point in a society where institutional trust, mutual empathy, and collective civic responsibility simply evaporate from the population. This data visualization charts the inverse correlation between trust and national output. When institutional trust metrics decline, there is a direct and corresponding stagnation in GDP and corporate productivity. The void acts as a massive economic bottleneck. Victor Prince-Dixon's diagnosis identifies the root of this crisis as a profound, widespread emotional disconnection among the population. To repair the macroeconomic system, leaders have to map the psychological terrain of the people. The strategy has to shift from traditional resource management to precise human capital engineering. To decode populations navigating these severe structural constraints, we turn to the Nigerian Emotional Map, or NEM. It serves as a universal blueprint for this exact kind of environment. The modern human margin operates on 5 distinct archetypes. The first is hopeful anger. Individuals maintain a high belief in the nation's potential, but they are constantly met with deep frustration over systemic failures. Second is ambitious anxiety. This is an intense, relentless drive for success, fueled by chronic instability. It is the exact psychological engine behind the exhausting hustle culture. Third is resilient dysfunction. People develop an incredible ability to survive extreme external odds, while simultaneously struggling to regulate their internal emotional intelligence. Fourth, distrustful trust. This is a paradox where citizens rely heavily on informal, personal networks to survive, paired with a deep, ingrained skepticism toward any formal institution. Finally, moral exhaustion. Prolonged exposure to poor governance and systemic letdowns eventually breeds a tragic detachment and cynicism. If you are a leader analyzing these 5 archetypes, you cannot view them as moral failings or personal flaws. They are highly logical, adaptive survival mechanisms. This modern psyche was hardwired through a series of macro-historical eras. It began with high community solidarity during the origins phase, followed by the deep trauma and foundational fear introduced during the collision of colonialism and the slave trade. By 1960, the nation entered the euphoria phase. The independence era brought immense national joy and structured optimism, but it was very quickly overshadowed by the shock of political instability. That instability led directly to disillusionment. Eras of military rule and corruption essentially institutionalized fear, betrayal, and disgust into the national psyche. Today, we are in the awakening phase of the post-1999 democratic era. Despite the return to democracy, we see a severe fragmentation of trust and heightened anxiety as people rely on fragile new institutions. Understanding this history proves that any institutional intervention will fail if it treats a surviving, traumatized population as simply broken. Observation is not enough. We need intervention. The goal is to transition toward conscious rebirth, an era defined by national pride and peacefulness. This structural flowchart illustrates the Emotional National Quotient, or ENQ. It's a psychometric framework designed to capture and measure a nation's invisible emotional infrastructure. By monitoring these inputs, institutions can identify deficits in trust, allowing leaders to repair systemic fractures in real time. By integrating ethical behavioral science and civic intelligence into governance models, we can re-engineer a population out of resilient dysfunction, creating a highly functional, emotionally intelligent ecosystem. The core engineering principle behind the ENQ is straightforward. You cannot manage, govern, or fix what you do not accurately measure. Victor Prince Dixon provides the framework for this shift toward human capital engineering, targeting the underlying emotional infrastructure. For C-suite executives and policymakers, the trust deficit represents a hard economic bottleneck, directly governing a nation's growth and corporate stability. Translating these insights into actual corporate culture and national strategy requires expert partnership. You need specialized guidance to shift towards systemic trust. True national transformation requires us to look past traditional infrastructure and actively re-engineer the human margin, guided by the vision of Victor Prince Dixon, the Transformer. Subscribe, like, and share for more insights.